our agencies. You talked about defending, but you're going to hear the personal side of our President Trump. Would you help me in welcoming Jonathan Cain's wife, my boss, the President's pastor, Pastor Paula White. Hey!
Really great to be with you guys, and you can be seated. I looked over to everyone, and I've got to say this. First, I'll thank you so much for being here, and thank you, Angel, and I've got to thank all of my colleagues, and we are here because we believe that we are fighting for the very heart and soul of this nation. No one gets paid. I don't get paid for anything I do. We pay our own expenses. We come here, and we believe. And I turned around to Jensen and Sharice. I said, you know, I feel like just being very vulnerable. I feel like there's so many stories I can tell you, story after story about President. But I started thinking as I was hearing the common theme from starting with Eric, you hear, Eric had a true salvation experience. I dedicated and baptized both of his babies and christened them. He opened up. I did President Trump's the funeral for his brother at the White House. From A to Z. We were heading to vacation, called me, he said, where are you? And I said, we're going to Seaside. He said, are you near an airport? I said, no, sir. He said, I need you up here. I need someone who can pray like you. He said, my best friend, my confidant, my brother. He was talking to him last night. I went to play golf, and they gave him blood thinners, and he's non-responsive now, Paula. And I started thinking about just this whole journey. Because, see, in case you don't know, I didn't grow up in church. My father committed suicide when I was 5 years old. I was sexually and physically abused. My mother has 2 masters and doctorates. She died a year ago. She became a raging alcoholic. When I was 18 years old, I was a pretty lost soul. And I stepped into this person's house who told me about Jesus Christ, and I gave my life to the Lord. I never set out thinking I'd pastor a church or have a media ministry or certainly not be a president's pastor. I just asked God if I could spend the rest of my life helping people. And one thing led to another. Before I knew it, we had started a church with 5 people that became the 2nd fastest growing church in America and the 5th largest church. And people would come that were politicians every single year. That was normal. President Bush did. I never forgot. Oprah Winfrey calls me. And she said, would you come out to my house? And they put me on the blanket between Obama and Michelle. Josh Boy and everybody courted me, and they were all chasing me until the day they got in the office, and I never heard from them again. I kind of thought that was how politics went. Mitt Romney called me. I went up to his house. His wife even fed me lunch with Franklin Graham. They even sent me a rocking chair. But I never heard from him again. And I kind of thought, because I thought, I'm called to preach the gospel. I don't do politics. And I had to repent. Because I do people, and God, by allowing me to do people, put me in a position that I now understand the power of having people of faith that understand the importance of what this country was founded on in politics. I'm going to give you a bunch of them in a minute. And so it started for me in a way that I would have never thought. It started for me 19 years ago. I get this call out of the blue. And they said, Mr. Trump's on the line. I'm like, yeah, sure. And we like to have fun. They said, no, for real, Pastor Paul. Mr. Trump's on the line. I'm like, sure. I mean, if they had the apprentice, I would have been like, you're fired. I pick up and his receptionist, Robin, says, Mr. Trump would like to speak with you. And that distinguished voice comes on, and he said, I've been watching you on Christian television. There's so much to all this story I could tell you. I've been watching you on Christian television, and he said, you're fantastic. You've got the it factor. I said, oh, sir, we call that the anointing. That was our hello. He began to repeat to me almost verbatim 3 of my sermons on the value of vision. And I thought to myself, he listens better than most of my congregation. He began to tell me about how he was confirmed a Presbyterian and how he grew up going to Nellie and Vincent Peale's church and the impact that he had. And he started telling me the sermons. And most people think of the power of positive thinking, but they don't understand that Norman Vincent Peale came up during a time when America was in a real crossroad and a real tough time right after the Depression. And he took the gospel with modern-day parables of real people and real lives, and he told them how Jesus Christ could change their life. And that formation embedded so deep, beside that his mother, who he just absolutely adores. His mother, his father taught him so much about business and building and everything else, but his mother, he says, gave him his flamboyance. His mother was a deep woman of faith and a deep woman of prayer. His mom would always say, just give it over to God. And he would begin to tell me all of his life, from the beginning to the middle tough parts, to where he had come up to. And he would share things with me, and I'm like, this conversation went on and on. And so then he says, are you in New York? And I was, because I was doing a Bible study for the New York Yankees. He said, well, why don't you stop by? I didn't know what to expect when I stopped by. I had my own preconceived ideas 19 years ago about the billionaire Donald Trump. And I went in a little bit guarded, to be honest, and I go in, and it's a real open door. It was very family feeling, just like you felt like family when you were with Eric. It was like there's no pretentiousness. It was just like, Rona, who was the secretary, and I knew Norma before Rona, Meredith was his writer, and receptions over here, which at the time was Robin and Keith's was security, and everybody's just, here, come on up to the 26th floor. And I thought, well, they're going to kick me out after a few minutes. And I just stay in there. And, people would come in, the kids would come in, and different people would enter and exit, and you'd hear different things. And then this became kind of an ongoing thing. I ended up having a church up in New York, and New York was a huge market, and I was up there all the time. And so he would always say, call me when you're here. So I would call him, and I would go in, and I would just sit there like a fly on the wall. And honestly, to be honest, I wanted something from him, because I always was taught this. You either learn by experience or by a mentor. And so I figured something out, and I'm going to be real honest here. I believe God gives us all time. We have 24 hours in a day, 7 days a week. And so I knew what it took of my time, where I placed it was very valuable. And I knew that it had to be important, because I knew what it took to run the ministry. We had almost 500 staff members. What it was to be a mother of 4. What it was to be a wife. What it was to care deeply about my family and the things I cared. I knew that I only had so much time. And one day I figured out what my time was worth. I worked more than 40 hours a week. But I figured out if I worked 40 hours a week, that my time at that time was worth almost $57,000 an hour. Oh. Then I figured out he was worth $6 billion. His time was worth $439 million an hour. So I thought, if I get an hour of his time, I'm going to soak up everything in his brain. Now, I wish I could tell you that it was really like, okay, I just immediately heard from God. I didn't immediately, but God would speak to me. I sat there and soaked it up. And I can tell you, I saw a man of integrity. Integrity is the same on the outside as the inside. I don't know how vulnerable I should be, because I know a lot of preachers that would make, you want me to get too wrong? I know a lot of preachers that made some, not the best remarks towards me as a woman. But I know a man that treated me very much like a father with integrity and dignity and class. Watch him as he was sitting up doing a set. He had 350 people doing the apprentice. He asked me to come be the first part of the closing of it and everything. And he would say, have the camera here, I want you to do this. He would always take time with people. He would get to know their story. He'd shake their hand. And I'm watching a man, I'm thinking, no wonder you're the kind of leader. But I met a visionary that saw something so much bigger. And there's so many stories I can begin to tell you. So as his vision, as I got exposed to that, it started impacting me. And I thought, man, if he can do this for the world, because that's how I thought, then I can do bigger things for God. Never knowing that God had a bigger picture than anything I'd ever dreamed of. So one day I go in and the Lord spoke to me. I can't get, the whole story's pretty wild. God spoke to me. I walked in, I said, sir, I said, I don't want your money, I have enough of my own. I don't want your fame, I have enough of my own. I want your soul. And I turned and walked out. Now either he thought, she is really cool and tough like me, or she is crazy. But I think it got his attention. And I meant it because God spoke to me and said, show him who I am. Now, I just thought that meant that I would help him get to know God better, just like John said, Paula, help me return to the Lord. I knew there was a strong foundation of faith. And we always had, every single year, we would mark 10 people that we were going to pray over. And we'd dedicate those 10 to the Lord. And so at the top of my list every year, Souls for Jesus would be Donald J. Trump. And I'd take a day every week and I'd fast for him and I'd pray and I'd lay hands on him. Little did I know God was doing this work not for Donald J. Trump or Paula White King. He was doing it for all of us. He was doing it for our children and our grandchildren. That God was putting together pieces to this puzzle that none of us can even begin to imagine on the bigger picture of sovereignty. I get to know him. I can tell him story after story. When he went to do one of the biggest deals of his life, somebody came and pitched him something, and he shook his hand and he said, I'll do it, and he was getting paid very little. It wasn't for the money. It wasn't for anything else. But he said, hey, Ron, I called my agent and got him on the line. I was there, and they got the agent on the line. The agent said, absolutely no, it'll be a deal killer. You can't do this. And he said, but I shook the man's hand. I shook his hand. You see, it's very easy to say promise made, promise kept. Because when Donald Trump tells you he's going to do something, he's going to do it. Telling these stories because people say he's tough. I just can't handle his tweets. Yeah, he's tough. We needed somebody tough. We needed someone willing. We needed someone with a backbone to stand up against some really ugly, evil, demonic forces that are trying to take this country down. Yes, he'll fight. He'll fight for the underdog. He'll fight for your future. He'll fight for your freedom. He'll fight for America. He'll fight for our economy. He'll fight for the unborn. He'll fight for Israel. He'll fight for life. He'll fight for your children off drugs and opioids and trafficking. He'll fight. He will fight. He'll fight for prison reform. He'll fight for opportunity zones. He'll fight for the vulnerable. He'll fight for justice. He'll fight for righteousness. And he will fight for God. I have a friend. Her brother has, I think, the largest church in the nation. She's been my friend for about 30-something years. And she and another girlfriend came up and they were going to do a girls' weekend with me in New York. I forgot to tell you about this story. In 2003 or 4, I was having Bible studies up there all the time, and he just threw me on the spot and say, "Here, Paula, pray." I'd be praying over her. He said, "Okay, now, speak the word of the Lord to him." So I don't know what it is. I felt like something, the Holy Spirit was prompting me to share things that I don't normally share. He just, be in season, ready and not. He just, here, do a Bible study. You know, and he's like, let's get in the Word. So this was the way things would go, and I was working, doing the Yankees. Then the Mets asked me to, which I'm supposed to do, but I did it anyway. So, it's okay. So, I'm doing all these things in New York, and my friends are up there, and they said, we want to meet Ms. Trump. And the reason they were up there is because one day I was walking with them, and I said, man, these hotels up here are expensive, because they are. In New York, you can't even get a dump at that time for $500 a night. I said, this is expensive. I said, I need a place up here. I was just saying, he said, oh, I've got a place. I said, I bet you do, you're Donald Trump. So he had just opened up his jewel. It's a place where Ivanka lived. And it's crazy, I've known Ivanka since she's a teenager. She's one of the most disciplined, caring, compassionate people you'll ever know. I'd get up real early, about 5-something in the morning, go work out every day. And the only other person in the gym would be Ivanka. She'd be up, working out, getting ready, and go. And this was before she worked for her dad, because she wanted to know that she could make it before she went to work for her dad. He's got the most amazing children. What Eric won't tell you, when he was in college, he has such a heart for kids with cancer that he built the urgent care center of St. Jude's Pediatric, $20-something million. When they talk about September and trying to shut them down, that's the craziness this family fights. That's the craziness all of us fight. That they would shut us down if they could in any way. You can take away anything you want of mine, but you'll never be able to take away my deep convictions of what this nation and what we're supposed to stand for. You can't take away my faith. You can't take away my God. You can't take away my voice. So I go in, and bottom line, I end up buying an apartment in a Trump building. And to this day, we still have the exact same staff with the exception of one doorman. I'm talking from 2013, 17 years later, same management, same reception, same security, same board, same everything. I mean, same doorman, all the same people. That shit says so much, not just his kids, but the people that are around him. I can tell you so many stories. Sitting in a car with him one time, and he gets his attorneys on the line, and we're all into the families in the car, and there's the limo, and he's fussing about something. I don't care if I've got to build a building, I don't care what I have to do. They are going to take that. And I'm thinking, why? He goes, I don't care how much it costs me. This is way back when. I'm like, what's he so upset about? I said, what's that about? He said, they want me to take down the American flag. I said, where? He said, at Mar-a-Lago. He goes, I'm not taking the flag down. This is way before he was president. So I'm taking my friends and meet him, and I'm just telling you sides of him. Who the man is. I mean, he's so close to his kids. He'd come in and he calls them honey. I mean, he's so close to his kids. I love this story. Like, when they were little, he'd always line them up, and he'd always, every single day, give them lunch. And he'd say, 3 things. He'd say, yes, sir. All right, say it with me. It's kind of like all 3 things. 3 things. No drugs, no drinking, no smoking. No drugs, no drinking, no smoking. And Eric was like, but Dad, I'm only 5. So I have Lisa up there and Deborah up there, and he's going on to Lisa, and he says, about her brother, he says, how's their marriage? I'm like, you're just meeting them. Don't ask this right now. How's their marriage? I'm like, oh, I'm just trying to smile, kind of play it off like everything's cool. And she goes, well, sir, like, it's really good. It's very, very good. Do they love each other? And I'm like, gosh, what are you doing? He said, do they love each other? And she said, yes, sir, they love each other. He said, because we can't afford to lose another one to the kingdom. And I'm thinking to myself as he's making deals that are 89 years, and I said, why'd you do that? How'd you do it like that? He said, Paula, it's all about legacy and lineage. He goes, the kids have enough. He goes, this is all about what you eat. I would always think, you think more like a preacher than most preachers I know. You think more kingdom-minded. So here I am, Lisa and Deborah, and he's talking to her, and then he turns to Deborah, and he doesn't know her, and he says, now what do you do? And she goes, oh, sir, I have a ministry to prostitutes and people that are out on the streets, and I go out to young women, and I tell them about the Lord Jesus Christ, and I help them get off the streets and out of trafficking and prostitution and etc. And before she can even finish, he goes, Ronna! His assistant says, bring my checkbook, bring it right now. And he strokes a check for $10,000. But that wasn't the only check. You do it over and over again. And this guy is walking into his office and standing over there kind of watching the whole thing. He looks at me and goes, you know you got this kind of money. He said, give her $10,000 too. He does a whole shakedown on him right there. And all the time, you know what, Jensen? I sat in his office a lot. And there weren't people coming asking the condition of his soul. There were a lot of Christians that asked for money. And you know what he did? He won't ever talk about it, but I'll tell you. He kind of has this mentality of don't let the right hand know what the left hand's doing when it comes to that. And he is so generous, beyond generous. I was vetting for him before I knew what vetting was. He'd say, Paula, do you know this ministry? And I'd say, maybe if I knew him, I'd tell him about him. I said, but I know somebody that'll know somebody that'll find out about him. And he would just give and give and give all the time. Occasionally he'd look at me and smile and he'd say, will that get me to heaven? I go, no, we both know it doesn't. I go, but it'll help with the reward. So I could tell you, he's much more than tough. He's compassionate. He's caring. He's strong. He fights for the underdog. He sticks to his word. He is an unusual kind of person. He's relentless. He has a backbone and a strength, and people always go, where does that kind of strength come from? It comes from his faith. It comes from the way that he sees the world. He doesn't see the world or you as bad. He sees the world as good and a place of opportunity that God can move. And he decided in 2011, he said, I don't like the direction this nation's going. He said, it's been bothering me for a while, Paula. He said, would you start praying? He'd ask me to pray all the time. Pray for Monica, she marries the right person. Pray for Eric to pass his exam. Pray for this. On Sunday, he calls me up. He says, we had 7 services on Sunday. He calls me. I'm running out to church to preach all 7 that morning. And he calls me up, mirror, and he says, Paula, I know you believe in this forgiveness thing. And he's not talking about redemption. He's talking about forgiving one another. I said, yes, sir. He goes, all right, I need to know something. He said, I'm struggling. He said, when do you turn the other cheek and when do you pull out the sword? That's a good question. I'm struggling too. I mean, this was the relationship on and on. And so he calls me and he said, will you pray? I said, of course I'm going to pray. He goes, no, I need you to bring some people around. We need reinforcement. He said, bring some pastors up here. Not for endorsement. He said, I just want to hear from God. So we prayed. I brought up about 30-something people. We prayed for 6 hours. He was in there almost the entire time. Not the whole time, but almost the entire time. Calls me up the next day. He says, come back over. He says, what's God saying? I said, sir, I feel like you're going to be president, but it's not the time. And I remember a tear coming down my eye. I remember a moment, it was like a frozen time, because remember, I was just a preacher, I don't do politics. And a tear came down my eye, and I said, but as my friend, I hate to think of the price you're going to pay. Little did I have any inclination of the price that this family would really pray for our future. For us. Eric said it. He didn't need it. He had a perfect family, great kids, loving wife, all the money you could imagine, played golf as much as he wanted without people giving him a hard time, could do anything he wanted, loved to work. But he did this because he believed that this nation needed a transformation. So you go, why do you do this, Paula? Because I believe that God sent me on assignment 19 years ago, just like He's put all of you on assignment today. That this nation, more than ever, has to have a transformation. He started it. He ignited it. He's done more in 4 years than most people have done. And I'll tell you this, that Biden certainly had, Biden, how did I say that? That Biden, well, maybe it was for real. That Biden has done in 40 years. It amazes me. Officially, I don't take my pay, neither does he. He gives his check back to charity or back to something. He hasn't received a dime for doing this. It sure has cost him a lot. But he asked me, he said, what are you going to do? At first I was joking with him. I was on the plane because they were campaigning like crazy. He said, Paul, what are you going to do? I said, John and I are going to be ambassadors. He said, you are? I said, yeah. He said, where do you want to be ambassador to? And he looked over at Ben and he looked over at Jared and everything. I said, to Turks and Caicos. He said, well, I said, I'm just kidding you. I said, we've got too much work to do. I said, there's a lot that we've got to get a hold of. Because by this time I'd started educating. I'd read my dummy for politics, and I'd read Roy Gruden's Politics, okay? I'd read it all by this time. And so I really started figuring out how just a small group of people control the masses of us. And how if we don't involve ourselves, that they dictate, and whoever can organize and activate will dictate. And so, I want to tell you, when you don't know that there are faith directors, my official position as an SGE, which is called a special government employee, that I work 180 days for the president, is that I'm advisor to the president over all faith. That means that every single office has not only directors, but they have policy directors, they have attorneys, they have full staffs in every single one. Our president made sure that things happen for people of faith and American people. We had 7 initiatives, and one of the first things that he wanted to do was alleviate poverty and strengthen the family. Talk about alleviating poverty. In the first year, 5.6 million people came off food stamps and are still off today. Over 2.4 adults came out of poverty, and 1.4 million children came off poverty. Talk about strengthening the family. We have the strongest, the absolute highest number of adoptions and the lowest amounts of kids being put into the system because he believes in strengthening families. You know what he's done with prison reform. That happened at a dinner that we were sitting around, and Sammy and them were talking to Jared and said, you know, if every church adopts just one prisoner, we would lower the recidivism rate. The next day Jared goes, can we do this? I said, we can do this. We didn't just do step 1, we did step 2. Then just like Bishop was saying, there are thousands and thousands of people who've been given a second chance, and we believe in second chances. 90% of them are people of color. Not only did that, but he said we could, with one stroke of the pen, with the job acts and the tax cuts he created for private wealth, to have a vehicle, to have a tax cut to go into where people need it the most through opportunity zones, with over $100 billion that have gone into the most distressed, vulnerable communities, that have been able to build up, through private citizens and help people who needed the absolute most. You aren't hearing what I'm saying. You've heard about human trafficking in 9 legislations. Let's talk about about religious liberty. It was under our president, not Obama, that we released Andrew Brunson from Turkey. It was our president that was the first that stood at the United Nations and talked about religious liberty. It was our president who signed executive orders because he realized 8 out of 10 people are persecuted for their faith. It was our president that called me up and said, can you get up here right away because I want you to minister to this family. When Otto Warmbier was brutally beaten in North Korea, and he said, this is not going to happen under my watch. It is our president who's taking tough stands against people who persecute people of all faith. He stands for our First Amendment. He stands for our Second Amendment. It's our president that just weeks ago stood up and said, listen, if you're on a college campus and you can have a fraternity or sorority that can use the gym, then you can have a religious organization that can use the gym. It was our president that stood for Title IX. It was our president that did the school guidance for prayer again, that said you cannot fire a college coach or a high school coach over football for praying. You cannot stop kids from praying at the flagpole. In fact, you can't stop kids from walking down the hallways and praying. You can't stop them from praying at all. The only thing they can't do is disrupt the classroom. But you cannot take God out of it, and you cannot take God out of this country. Should I keep on going? What he's done for mental health care, how he's done a commission, what he's done for opioid and substance abuse, what he's done for suicide prevention, what he's done for our vets with $73 million, what he's done with $5.2 million loans from the SBE with PPP. When he stood there and he said, Paula, we gotta make churches essential. Paula, we gotta make sure churches get these loans because we gotta make sure that they take care of people spiritually, mentally, physically. What he did with our farmers, what he did with Farmers to Family when he called up Secretary Perdue and he said, Sonny, what are we gonna do? These dairy farmers, their milk is going bad, their produce is going bad. He said, put it to use. He said, and use the houses of worship to do it. So $4 billion later since March, we've had Farmers to Family with over 100 million boxes of food, dairy, cheese, produce, meat, going out to those who are the most food insecure. Come on, that's what our president has done. What did he do? Promise A, promise that. What did he do? He moved the embassy back to Jerusalem and moved it to budgets. He recognized it as a capital. He recognized it as a Bible land. He recognized the Golan Heights, and he just signed the Abraham Accord. Come on, you better put your hands together. He gives $4.2 billion to Israel every single year. The greatest nation. What did our president do? He did away with all the bad trade deals like NAFTA, and he put in United States, Mexico, Canada agreement that brought in 176,000 jobs and $68 billion to our economy. What did he do? He put tariffs against China, which brought billions of dollars back and brought manufacturing back. Come on, he brought steel back. He brought energy back. You want to know why there's more peace in the Middle East? Because we're not dependent on their oil. We're not dependent on their natural gas. We are the largest energy producer of natural oil. He knows. He believes in school choice. You put Biden in, kiss your Christian schools goodbye. Kiss it all goodbye. How are they going to get out of that? No, y'all stand up because I'm almost through. He believes that parents are better at making a decision, and a zip code should not determine the destination of your child. At 3.1%. He put over $2 trillion so that we are not weak. We are the strongest force on this earth. What he did not do is drop $1.5 billion in Iran. What he did is get rid of ISIS. What he did was get rid of terrorists. Oh, come on, you can do better than that. He changed the circuit courts of the Second Court. He changed it of the Third Circuit Court. He changed the 11th Circuit Court by immediately putting in 220 judges and getting to work hard with the legal entities of this nation. And now he's going to put in the Third Supreme Court. restrictions off discrimination of people of faith. You couldn't get grant monies before. Now there are grant monies going through churches that are getting $5 million for fatherless situations, that are getting money for helping through FEMA, that are getting money through every agency, whether it's HUD, whether it's HHS. Energy gave the Faith Department and Energy did $69 million through Opportunity Zones alone. USAID, millions and billions of dollars going around the world to make sure that people of poverty. Look what has happened through WeFi, through our Women's Global Initiative, making sure that over billions of dollars were given to women around the world to give them opportunity and giving them land rights again. What has he done? He's made sure that our STEM program, that our education programs have been rebuilt. I can go on and on telling you what all our president's done. But what I can tell you is I was deceived years ago, like many people. What I can tell you after being educated on it is Biden hasn't done much of anything for 40 years. And our president has done just about everything for 4 years. And this is the vulnerable part and where I want you to pray. I didn't totally buy into Obama. I always voted Republican, I'll tell you why. What our president do, he's the most pro-life. Mexico City policy immediately defunded Planned Parenthood. Mexico City policy, people go, what is that? That was $9 billion of your taxpayer dollars that was paying for foreign abortions. That immediately within the first week, what he do is the first city president to go to the March of Life. Everybody talked about it, he does it. People are like, we all really pray. We really pray. Lay hands on him. Man, I anoint everything with oil. You go in my office, it's like a bowl of communion. Everybody knows there's communion everywhere. There's anointing oil. And I'm putting oil everywhere. It's been all over the place. I go, y'all do whatever you have to do to debug it, but I'm going to demonize it. I'm through, Pastor Tom. Here's my concern. You know, I was just an average person. I wouldn't have known that there were faith offices either. I wouldn't have known the thousands of accomplishments that a man like this did either. I'd have probably just listened to the news and watched the ads, been on social media. You know, I didn't buy, I think I'm a pretty good read on people. And I didn't totally buy into Obama. You know why? I'm being honest. I always voted Republican because I could just never get past the life thing. Because I've spent a lot of my life doing a lot of social justice. Anyone who knows me, right at the heartbeat of LA after the riots. I mean, it's been my whole life. I've been given almost every award you can be given for it. 36 years. But I could never get over the life. I couldn't go in there and pull that lever. Now I certainly can. I mean, it's not in comparison to 10 years ago. But I say I was deceived because I thought, he's a senator for a term, he's a good speaker, but what kind of experience does he really have to run this? He's never had a real business, never had anything. But you know why I voted? I didn't vote for Obama. I've always voted Republican. I said, but you know where I felt like I didn't have a real problem? When Biden got up and told his story about his wife dying, and I feel very compassionate about this, and his son, I thought, oh, he's been through hurt, he'll know what I feel like. And I felt compassion for him. And I was deceived. I was deceived. And I think there's a lot of people that might be your neighbors or your friends or your family, that they just don't know truth. It's not that they're not great people. It's just that Satan is a great deceiver. And he's really good, comes as an angel of light, at making something look right, done he saw, when it's not right. And making something that doesn't look right, that is right, before God and a nation. May we pray, may we activate, and may we work like it's all up to God or all up to us, and pray like it's all up to God. Thank you for your time. God bless America. God bless everyone. And God bless our president and our church.